Welcome to Real Mob Stories with James Proctor. Hope everyone's doing well today. I'm pleased to have a special guest and friend on the show today, Jeff Nadu of the Sit Down. How are you doing today, Jeff?
I'm doing good, James. Thanks for having me. It's always good. I see you've been growing a lot, and good for you. There's not a lot of people that are really doing this at a high level anymore, and they're few
Yeah.
and far between. So, thank you for having me on. I know we're going to talk about, as usual, something some craziness on here.
Yeah, no, and I really appreciate it. And one of the things I've told people that you break a lot of the stories. You have a lot of contacts that based upon having several years in this genre, and so I definitely look at you as someone that provides a lot of the news that comes out, and so I know you've had to foster and grow those relationships over
Well,
time, and
yeah.
so
Well, as you know, I mean, you get to know people over the years doing this. And I felt like if, 3, 4 years of doing this, I didn't have any connects or people that I knew that maybe I wasn't doing it right. And look, this is not a genre with, I guess YouTube is added to it, but it's not like we have a bunch of stories. A lot of the stories you have now are people that pass away, some of these old
yeah.
guys.
Hmm.
Yeah, this genre over the last couple of years has been not short of stories. And, whether it's people that were there at these things or whatever, you know, and some of them don't like me, but they'll still kind of on an anonymous basis tell me things. And that's one of the ways I got the info that Vinny Asaro had passed away. It was just someone
Hmm.
that I had a relationship with that contacted me about it. And you get to know some of the families of these people. They kind of stay off the record though. And yeah,
Yeah.
it's appreciative. Thank you. Any way I can help make the genre better, I try to do it.
Yeah, and I appreciate, and you definitely do that, and you're growing a lot as well, and you'll be at 100,000, I would say,
God
pretty
willing,
soon.
we'll see if we get we'll see if we get
Yeah.
there.
Yep, definitely. So, yeah, I just thought a couple of things to talk about. I was kind of curious. You on Saturday. I have to admit that I have not been watching some of the other shows in the genre as much lately. I've been working on new projects with work and all that, and so I did watch Joey Merlino on Saturday, and I noticed that he and Snuff were kind of giving you a little bit of a tough time. And I was a little surprised because I remember you were the one that had actually talked about Joey coming on YouTube and all that. And so I was just curious what happened to that relationship, because it seemed like it was good at one time.
Yeah, I think at one point I was cool with most of the people on here, whether it was
Yeah.
informants or whatever. But I think what I've learned about this genre, James, and maybe you've felt it as well, is everybody likes you until they do something controversial and you don't agree with it. And
Hmm.
you, as kind of an in the middle person that investigates this stuff or puts it out, I'm not a
Right.
journalist. Okay, I'm a reporter.
Right.
I find information and I put it out. Um,
Right.
I've learned that if people do stuff that you don't agree with, you're looked at as the enemy because you were just to kind of be there to support what I did. And I think that's
Right.
one of the reasons that I maybe have an issue with him and with others at this point. Essentially, yeah. Look, I lived in South Philly for years. I've talked about
Hmm.
that. I know Snuff. I've known Joe Snuff for many years. I know a lot of Joey's friends that are affiliated with the show, and we still
Right.
talk today. And um, they had contacted me when the show was going to come out. They asked me to promote it. I was always, trying to be helpful to those guys.
Yeah.
Anything that can make this genre better, I'm here to help. Right.
Right. Hmm.
Even their Patreon, I've pushed it. And
Yeah.
when they have interesting shows and content, I talk about it. They took an issue with a show that I did recently about, it was essentially a case study on, is Joey Merlino guilty of anything?
Right.
Because anytime he talks, it's, a rat put me in jail or the
Hmm.
government just hates me. And I
Right.
think that's partly true. But
Yeah.
I think one of the things I've noticed about a lot of these guys is, you know, they don't want to take responsibility for the facts that they decided to get into a life of crime. And
Right.
look, Joey did his time, and that's honorable. No one will say he didn't.
Right.
And Stuff and I had some issues kind of off the record with,
Mm-hmm.
they're unhappy and say that a lot of us just use their name for views, which again, we all do that, right?
Yeah, we do. Yeah.
Kind of what this genre is. And, I think they felt that I should have allegiance to them. And in turn, all due respect to them, but they at one point told me that they would do an interview, right?
Mm-hmm.
And whatever. And they kind of strung me along, just like a lot of people. And
Right.
I guess we got to a point where there were certain things I didn't agree on, and they took it negatively and started kind of doing an ad hominem attack. I will say one other thing. They also took an issue with me platforming Gene Borrello, which was a big thing. A few weeks ago, I'll address this. Gene came on my show. He made a comment about Joey that was not true, unfounded, that we know of. And I mentioned to Gene, that's not right. You shouldn't do that. And we get into an argument. And Joey mentioned that he called my mother some things, and I got rid of him. And I haven't had him on my show since, and I won't have him on my show again. Gene has gotten me into an issue with some of the behavior that he's had, and it's just been a confluence of everything. And I think people realize that they think you're your friend, and you have to constantly support everything they do. And that's just not how I work.
Yeah, and that's something I think's a little challenging in this genre, is that people they'll say, well, it's like you have to support them 100% on everything they say. And, that's just not the way it works. In real journalism, that doesn't happen. You don't, you kind of have a distance from the folks. And, you have relationships with these people, but, I would say, like in my case, I don't necessarily have like deep friendships with any of these guys that are, informants, or, even, Joey, or any of these guys. I don't know about you.
I also want that to be made clear. I have never met Gene Borrello. I've never met Dominic Vitale. I've never met any of these people. The only people I've ever met off this genre is RJ, and I've met FBS a couple of times. But outside of that, I don't sit down and have dinner with Gene on a regular basis. I'm not sitting there. Gene is, at times, I've called Gene out for his behavior. And I will tell you that Gene was intoxicated that night he came on. If I knew he was, I kind of realized it about 20 minutes in.
Yeah.
I probably wouldn't have had him on. It got out of hand, and I'm not proud of it. I never wanted my show to be that. But what I really had a problem with the Joey camp was I was sticking up for Joey. I told him, you can't say this kind of stuff about anybody, like even people that I'm not a big fan of on here. If you came on my show and said, this person is this, and you had no proof to back it up, I'm going to mention to you, hey, you shouldn't say that.
Right. Definitely.
So it's just been a confluence of some things, and, they're welcome to say what they want, but, I have a long history with them guys. I know a lot about them. I've known Snuff a long time. I've known Snuff probably 15 years now.
Oh, wow.
I've known Snuff. I know his family. I know we all kind of know the same people. And they brought up some things that I thought were a little lowbrow. A lot of people, when they have an issue with me, they bring up the fact that, I did have a run-in with somebody in that world. And I've made it clear, the kid that slapped me, I know known for years. I think he was intoxicated. We just kind of seen each other on the wrong period of time. He was upset about something, but I knew the kid. I knew him for a long time. It wasn't one of these things where I got jumped and I never met the guy. As people know, like that area is, still very dug in, and
it is,
I do have, like, one of the things that's changed my life considerably about doing what I do is it has affected my life down there a little bit. I think they view me as someone, you lived here, but I try to do it in a respectful way, kind of like I did with the Johnny Chang thing. I try to be fair, but if Joey says something that's crazy to me, I'm gonna mention it. If he calls Sonny Franzese an informant, I don't agree with that. Right. I've always tried to stay in the middle, but as you know, people take it as, oh, he doesn't like that guy. Like, for instance, with yourself, I don't always agree with the folks you interview. You don't
Right.
agree with the folks that I interview.
Right.
There are times where you and I have had some issues with each other, but
Yeah.
generally what you're doing is good for the genre, right?
Yeah.
Not everything that I do is
Exactly.
good for it, but most of it is.
Yeah,
And,
it is.
you can't let the static get in the way, and we're not always going to agree on things.
Yeah, no, exactly. And that's something like with this genre, I'll see what happens in other genres where you have more of the content creators collaborate, they, work together on stuff, and you don't see that too much in this genre. And so that's why I appreciate like you coming on, because I think it's good for the genre when folks go on each other's shows and they try to help each other out. And I think that doesn't happen too much. One of the best guys on here, always said that you and RJ and James with OC Shorts are the best people in this genre with content. And he doesn't go on anybody's shows, talking about OC Shorts.
I think, I think all of us have a certain way that like we do things. Like, for instance, one of the things that I always respected about Lee, right, your former partner, and even when you got involved, is you brought a certain level of professionalism to the show that some of the previous shows we had didn't necessarily have. But you also, your guys' niche was you talked about some of the guys on here, and you kept us updated with Mikey Scars did this, Joey did this,
Right.
maybe you kind of did some reviews of some of the shows. Me and OC, we do history. Now you do some of the history. So it's everybody kind of has their niche. I do a lot of interviews, maybe unseen that no one's ever heard from. So we all have kind of our niche. And as you alluded to, I think collaboration is important. But I also will understand from a point of like OC Shorts' standpoint, James, he doesn't. I think he views, some of the stuff I do, or even maybe you do, as want to get involved with the toxicity of it, right?
Right.
Some of the down and dirty stuff. And look, I've admitted, I don't like Gene occasionally. I don't like some of the things he does, but anytime I have him on, I mean, people watch, and look, at the end of the day, this is about views. And look, I like a lot of the history shows I've done, but you have to mix it up too.
Yeah, what's interesting is, and I like the history part. I wish I could do more of the history. That's why I like doing the shorts, because I can grab people's attention for 60 seconds while I can't for 15 minutes. But it's just crazy that the most popular show that I've done recently was the one where I talked about Gene, what he said to you, where he threatened you. Basically, when he was drunk.
It's so funny. It's real quick. It's so funny you bring that up, because and this is kind of the theory that I'm sure you agree with.
Yeah.
I did some of my favorite shows I ever did. I did a show recently on a guy, Hoboken Joe Stassi. Okay.
Yeah.
This guy, like, super interesting, fascinating guy. And it barely did any views. One of my favorite shows I ever did was Is There a Mafia Family in Seattle? Right. And I'd uncovered that no, there wasn't. It was just a bunch of Italian guys that had strip clubs and things of that nature.
Right.
And I still look back and think, wow, that was such an interesting show. And I'll have people that like, hey, can you do a show on Rockford, Illinois, or Madison, Wisconsin? And I'd love to. I love deep history.
Yes.
It's like you do those and it gets 3,000-4,000 views in the course of 3 months. But I've done shows with Gene, like truthfully, a live show with Gene where I had 1,300 people watching it live. It get 140,000 views in the end.
Yeah.
What can I do there? It's you have to, and you live and learn, and there's a bunch of time I've wasted doing this. But as you said, I mean, the Gene and I thing was a mockery. It was nonsense. And that was the best show you did. So it's like
20,000 views on something. For me, that's a lot. That's a lot. Because normally I get 5,000 or 6,000 normally.
But you didn't spend any time. You just sat there.
I spent no time on it.
Yeah, it's a shame, and that's one of the drawbacks I have with this genre. I want to get into talking about cartels and organized crime and other groups, and it's like You know, it's weird, James. I did a show on the Root Eye organization, right? Albanians.
Yep.
Or I'll do a show on like a Greek mob boss, Spiros Valensis.
Yes.
And I know that if I put Greek mobster Spiros Valensis, no one will watch it.
Yeah.
Now, if I put John Gotti threatens Spiros Valensis over the phone, I'll cut your head off or whatever.
Yeah.
We'll watch it.
Yes.
I don't, it sucks, but that's just how you have to do things.
Yeah, it is. And, you know, like for me, Lee helps me with my thumbnails. I mean, that's such a big deal is the thumbnails. And I'm not good at that. Yeah.
Very important.
Yeah, it's just crazy to me. So, yeah, something I spent very little time, 20,000 views, and then I'll do like a mini documentary and get 2,000 or whatever, get nothing.
It's really disheartening. And so when people ask, you know, why do people do these? Like, why do I do what I do? Why do you do what you do? That said, though, I think that does help, and that's helped me grow, right? Because I've been able to maybe fish into another audience that I wouldn't normally have. So it's relative, but it does suck because when it comes down to it, as Lee would say, what it comes down to is I just want to talk about interesting stories and, you know, but you got to do what you got to do, I guess.
Yeah. Yeah. And on Gene Borrello, I was just, curious. Yeah. So, I mean, I think that was a great point that you made because a lot of people assume that you were like good friends with Gene, that you hung out with him and all that. And that's
never met
true.
him.
You know,
never met him. The only meeting I've had with him is like doing a show like this. And, you know, I will offer you a glimpse into my experiences with Gene off the record.
Yeah.
I did a show with Gene a month or two ago where he made some comments about Angel and her children. And I specifically told Gene beforehand, Gene, don't mention the woman's family. Don't talk about her kid. And I told him specifically about this. And he did it anyway. He got off the show and I had to deal with the fallout from it. Right. He put fires and then I got to put him out. And I got to deal with it by taking the show down, or YouTube will take it down because he uses a slur or something. So you know, Gene is Gene. He's always in the news on something. He just got arrested, which I'm sure we'll get into. So you got to trade the bad with the good, man.
Yeah, no, exactly.
But he won't be on my show again.
Sure. Yeah, I understand. So what do you think on Gene? So, you know, you broke the story on this. You talked about, you know, Gene Borrello, he'd gotten arrested. Then he gets picked up again because of the failure to appear. And, you know, I kind of threw out a hypothesis of wondering, I know he's not dealing with anyone from the mob per se, but, you know, I've got the idea maybe he still provides information of some sort. I don't know. But what do you think of what happened with Gene, how he was easily able to get out of, you know, he didn't have to post a bond, didn't have to do anything like that, even though he failed to appear?
Well, I think in terms of his arrest, the charges were misdemeanors, right?
They are very minor.
Yeah, so we're not dealing with, you know, a felony one of like ag assault or, you know, attempted murder or something. It was a misdemeanor. Gene also, and this is something a lot of people don't realize, Sammy Gravano is on lifetime supervision, right?
Yes.
So the federal government can appear at his residence or place of business at any point and say, what are you up to? What are you doing right now? He's under constant supervision. Gene is a free and clear adult, just like you and me.
True.
He can go as he pleases. If he wants to go to Kansas or Texas or Idaho, he can go. Now, like Joey, and I know you talked about this, Joey went to Italy, right?
Yeah.
Every country in Europe has their own discretion on will they accept a convicted felon in America. It really depends.
Right.
Gene could have an issue going to, you know, Cyprus or Italy or something. But he is a free and clear adult. He has no restriction, right? So Gene is, you know, this is not an important thing. This is not an important charge.
Right.
He did get picked up. He did do about 6 hours in a holding cell as far as what he told me.
Yeah.
And then he was bonded out and hit with the same desk ticket that he has to appear. as you know, he didn't appear at some. This happened about 6 months ago at a bar in Tampa.
Mm-hmm.
Now, the story that he told me, now remember, what he told me
Mm-hmm.
is he attempted to hit a guy with a bottle and missed
Mm-hmm.
him, and they grabbed him up, whatever. But I have it on good authority, someone that was in the restaurant when he was arrested the other day, they walked right in, walked over to his table, took him into custody, and walked him out. And do I think he's still talking to the government? No way.
Okay.
Gene is, I don't think he's on the top of anyone's Christmas card list with agents per se.
Right.
Now,
right.
The one thing that Gene had that he dealt with that a lot of guys don't. Gene dealt with a judge called Judge Block, incredibly liberal judge.
Yes.
Very sympathetic to criminals. He is willing to say, okay, you did do this, but Gene, if Gene had a different judge, Gene would possibly still be in prison. Gene would still be under supervision. The federal government's all about that point system, and the judge has the discretion to sentence you to whatever. And I think Gene was lucky that he had Judge Block, because his behavior after getting out of prison, even the recent time he got out of prison, where he did 7 or 8 months with the feds, I mean, he's constantly in trouble. And I was able to hear, I don't know if you were able to hear it, but Gene was recently on with Vlad TV. I saw the whole interview.
Yeah.
And one of the most telling pieces of it, and people will hear it eventually when Vlad puts the part out, Gene was asked, are you still willing to hurt someone? And Gene essentially said, obviously, I can't use a weapon, and I'm not going to use a weapon, but I have no problem knocking your teeth out if you disrespect me. And Gene is still very much a guy who I think will spend life in and out of in trouble with the law. That's just who he is.
No, I mean, that makes sense. And then one of the things about Gene that one of the things I was going to ask about was what is a little surprising to me is I don't remember him. Well, 2 things I wanted to mention. One is that I feel like he's always gotten breaks. I mean, he's gotten more breaks than most people. And there's a lot of men out there, people with strong personalities, type A personalities, like Dominic Shikali, a Michael Francis, even his cousin Anthony Ruggiano. They want to help him out, and he gets all these breaks, but he doesn't ever take advantage of it. He always promises the world, and then it doesn't last. What do you think's the reason for that?
Well, I've said this publicly, either with him on the show or not. Gene's biggest issue is himself. I mean, his bravado, I've noticed, like, when I talk to Gene on a basis of just him and I, he's very, I don't know if he's likable, but he's easier to deal with, right? He's open, he's willing to talk about things. He doesn't have the false bravado. But I've noticed whenever he's around an Arulada or a Dominic or on a bigger platform that a lot of people are going to watch, Gene is very willing. He has to constantly one-up people, right?
And
I think what I've learned is all the people you just mentioned, Michael, Dominic, Arulada, even like a John A-Light. Whatever we want to say about John A-Light, he still had the ear of like a John Jr., right?
Yeah, he did, right.
Dominic was a captain. Michael was a captain. Arulada was a boss, right, of a faction. Gene was just a leg breaker, right? Or just an enforcer. I think Gene constantly has to have reaffirmation that he was a tough guy, right? And I think people see through that, and Gene doesn't like to be disrespected. When it comes to a guy like Joey, I firmly believe if Gene ever saw Joey, he would attack him. He doesn't think about the consequences. And he very much, and I always say to him, like, I never understood, Gene, why did you cooperate? I don't understand it. Like, he comes across to me as a guy who he enjoys the fact that people think he was a mob guy, right? He was a gangster. He was out there doing stuff. And, in a way, he's served a lot of time. And I never really understood why he ever cooperated. But Gene's got a lot of opportunity. I mean, as you alluded to, those people that you just mentioned are all doing something positive. They're making money doing this, telling their stories. And one thing I noticed about Gene, he doesn't have the initiative to create something on his own, right? So like,
right.
I tell him all the time, Gene, why are you going on Adam 22, Vlad, all these huge platforms, but you don't promote nothing? You don't promote a podcast. You don't promote a vodka brand. You don't promote a cigar. You don't promote nothing. You just promote stuff that might happen, right? I might have a TV show. When's it come on? I don't know. We didn't film it yet. So it's like you're not getting the benefit of Adam 22 interview.
That's true.
And you're making quick money, and that's cool, but Gene is a quick money guy. He likes the quick money. He likes to go out and buy stuff. And I don't think he worries about the future, because I still think he believes in his head, like, I'm not going to have a future, because he didn't really ever know a future. And he does have a problem with choosing the right women, I think.
Right.
And I told him that. You know, he's his own worst enemy. And I think, sadly, I find him to be one of the more compelling people. I really do. But I don't think I could ever work with him on like something, because I would worry that he was going to get jammed up or something. So
no, you're right on that, because it is people, for whatever reason, they tune into him, you know. And it's funny, a lot of people say they don't like him or whatever, but if you have him on, everyone's going to watch, you know.
And that's the thing, and he knows that, so he constantly emboldens himself and says stuff he shouldn't say, because he does not like to be one-upped. And one thing that I've always gotten through to him, even up until the last episode we did, because he was drunk, is you know, he didn't like to hear what I told him, but I wanted to think he was maybe listening a little bit. But he could not like what I'm saying, but it's the truth. I mean, Gene's not James. Gene's not 22 years old, right?
No, he's 40 now.
You know, it's you're not a young kid anymore. You know, you gotta. You know, look at Dom. I mean, Dom, you know, some people don't like Dominic, but he makes money. You know, he's found a way to have a better life for himself. And
he does.
Gene, I think, is just his own worst enemy.
No. And the last thing on Gene I was going to mention real fast is that does it seem, I don't remember him being under control of alcohol like he's been recently, because I know that he talked about on one of the interviews that he did, I think he told a story that he had actually killed 2 people in the life, and that wasn't true. And then, you know, obviously he was intoxicated when he was with you. Have you noticed that to be more of a problem now than in the past?
Yeah, I'm fascinated by that. I think absolutely it's become a problem for Gene. I'm not going to come out and say he's got an issue.
Right, of course.
But when, you know, as some of the folks in here that have struggled with addiction know, when alcohol becomes a criminal problem where you're getting in trouble because of it, it's hurting your life from a standpoint, which it is. It's starting to be a problem for Gene's life. And I don't think Gene, like, I don't think he goes out and gets wasted, but I think Gene goes to like a high-end sushi bar with his friends, and they're drinking drinks, and he has too many, and you know, maybe somebody says something to him that he doesn't like, and he flies off the handle real quick. Look, if I'm out and somebody says, I hate your fucking content, like, I'm not gonna fight him over it. Like, I don't care.
Right. Yeah, exactly.
But one thing, it's funny you mentioned like him saying he whacked 2 people. Like, one of the things that I've noticed with Gene is, like I said, when he'll go on a big platform, he went on Vlad and told that Ali Shade story again, which I proved 3 years ago was completely untrue. It never happened. And Gene has admitted it wasn't true. He claimed, though, it was another Ali Shades, right?
Oh, yeah.
But then he goes on Vlad and says, well, it was a Genovese heavyweight, Ali Shades. And I'm just like, this story isn't true. And Gene never told me in all the various interviews I ever did that he killed anybody.
Right. Yeah.
And that's just
and he would have if he had done that and he had told the Fed, you know, that he would have put it in his book. He would have talked about it, because that would give him more cred, you know, so-called in his eyes, you know.
You know what's so interesting, James, is I think Gene, in a way, is a result of, I think, what he thinks is a weak criminal justice system, right? Like, he has gotten breaks time and time again from good judges, kind of like a lot of criminals today in America, where you do a crime, you can go carjack someone and be out in Philadelphia or Chicago quickly. And I think Gene has realized, like, if Gene had let's say Judge Sullivan, right? And
Yes.
Joey had. I don't think Gene
Things
would
would
be
have been different.
right. So this is the result of certain poor judges or
Mm-hmm.
maybe a justice system that doesn't want to prosecute. And I think Gene weirdly is a result of that. But
That's true.
again, I hope, for people's sake, Gene wises up. But
Yeah.
hey, I mean, he hasn't done it yet. So
Yeah. No, I know.
I think it's
And the
just Gene
last
being Gene.
Yep, exactly. And so just the last thing I wanted to mention was that I thought it was fascinating because you was able to break the story on the Changolini situation with John Changolini, and man, that's a fascinating family to me. That they've been involved with Philly for a long time. I guess now what, 3 generations of Changolinis when you look at it.
Yeah,
And
they and what's interesting is like Chicky
yeah,
Chang, the patriarch, the father. I
yeah,
mean, he goes back to, it's alleged that in the 60s, he was involved with whacking a Teamsters boss with
hmm,
Frank Sheeran many years ago, the Irishman,
yeah,
which,
hmm,
I mean, at that point, he was, I believe, in his early 20s. I mean, he was
yeah,
listed as an unemployed part-time laborer, I believe.
yeah,
But he ended up becoming a very respected guy. I know Joey occasionally talks about when he was younger, Chicky
hmm,
would be there with Bruno or whoever, and he ends up having 3 sons. And as you talked about, I agree. It's definitely one of the more fascinating stories in Philly of
yeah.
brother against brother. It's kind of like a Shakespearean tale of, you know,
Yes.
they're all on other sides. One was killed, right?
Mhm.
One was seriously wounded and still is
Mhm.
dealing with that to this day. And on the other
Yep.
side, and then you have
Mhm.
this kid, John, who the only reason John was spared is he was in prison at the time during the war.
Yes.
He then
And I
comes
didn't
home.
know that at the time, and I started looking into him. It's kind of his background, and yeah, and he wasn't on the street during the
No, his
war.
brother
That
Michael would
saved him.
come. Yeah, his brother Michael, who he was in the Merlino side as well, Joey, or sorry,
Yep.
Johnny.
Mhm. Yep.
Michael would come and consult with him and his father
Yeah.
about what should I do, and he told him, choose wisely. But John is interesting. I will tell you, and I think one thing that I do offer that maybe some don't is I did live there. Okay. And
Yes.
one thing we have to realize about John Chang and his wife Kathy is
Mhm.
they're bon vivants. And for anyone that doesn't know, a bon vivant is as a kind of man about town, right? They know
Mhm.
everybody.
Yeah.
They're always supportive of people. They're doing charity work. And John had a newsstand down at Chicky and Pete's at the parking lot there for years. And
Yeah.
Kathy works at Chicky and Pete's. They have a house down the shore. Kathy's been a bartender at Memories of Margate for decades. She has a
Oh
bar in
wow.
the back. Her and
Mhm.
Jerry were close. Johnny was always sitting there, and they're very tied into the community down there. They don't
Mhm.
have any children, and they view the nieces that they have and the nephews as their children.
Yeah.
And from what I understand, their nieces, who also work at Chicken Pete's alongside Kathy, were
Yeah.
there. They were there with a boyfriend or two. One of the boyfriends had an issue with 2 individuals, one of which was a guy, Joe Baldino, who I'll mention, and
Yeah.
another guy. Fracas ensues. One of the girls is grabbed by the neck.
Mm.
Johnny is then called. Johnny comes to the restaurant, assaults, essentially slaps one of the men.
Yeah.
A big brawl ensues. One of the other nieces is knocked out cold.
Mm.
It goes out into the parking lot. Joe Baldino hits a cop and is arrested. Now,
Oh
Joe
wow.
is an interesting guy. He's not a made guy. He's related to Frank Baldino. He was his uncle. Frank
Okay.
Baldino was whacked by John Veazey back in the early 90s. Frank
Yeah.
was an associate, a bookie. He was connected to Joey a little bit, and he
Yeah.
was killed by John Veazey. And then one of his other relatives is Philip Narducci,
Yep.
who a lot of people know. And
Mhm.
Joey Baldino actually owns a restaurant called Phillips, which is a steak place on
Yeah.
Passyunk Avenue. It's one of the best. He got into it with a cop outside. He didn't even do anything. He didn't hit
Oh
anybody.
wow.
It was his friend who he was trying to kind of get into check.
Yeah.
And it just kind of some people got arrested. Johnny Chang, though, did not get arrested.
Right.
So I guess the question is, this is not Joe Baldino's first, him and his relation, Phil Narducci, have had issues. They don't like each other.
Yeah.
I know Joey, I put out a video yesterday inside, which it's very grainy, but there's a very interesting part where Joey Baldino is asked, whose side are you on? And he mutters the old man's side, which the old man is Johnny Chang. Johnny Chang is about 70 years old.
Yeah.
And remember, Joey Baldino's I think he's 39. So
yeah,
I know that Joey, from what I know, I wouldn't say they're best of friends, but I believe Joey has a rental property close to the Changs, and from what I understand, I thought they were cool.
Yeah.
But this didn't arise from Joey Baldino. This arose from the friend, who hit some people he shouldn't hit,
right?
Women, and this all kind of spiraled out. But Joey Baldino has also had issues with certain other Philly guys. There was a story he allegedly did something a couple of years ago to somebody's home. That's kind of been a street thing for a while. So it's just kind of been a big thing. Will there be any fallout? Look, I've heard other creators try to say it was because of Joey's podcast. Just complete nonsense.
Yeah, I don't believe that.
This is just a neighborhood thing.
Yeah.
And to be fair, I'm just being real. Again, I don't mean to keep saying this. I live there. Yeah. This happens all the time. Okay.
Yeah.
The only reason this is a story is because Johnny was somewhat involved. If that wasn't the case, we wouldn't have heard about this.
So he went there to be as I guess two things, a peacemaker, but also the guy that did that to the woman, he just was going to
from what I understand, a lot of
him.
Yes. From what I understand, the guy Mike that did some of this stuff, the guy that people were upset with, I've heard from several people, not just one, that he's not well liked. Some people look at him kind of a douchey guy. I don't know him. I'm just saying what I've heard. Yeah. He does go to business. I heard he's a good business guy. But yeah, I think Johnny went with the thought of these are like my children. I'm gonna
exactly.
Johnny Chang lives literally a stone's throw away from Chicky and Pete's. He got there quick. And from what Kathy told me, because she contacted me on my post, she told me she was on the way home from the shore. She got the call and just happened to be close, getting off the highway. She barreled over to Chicky's with a pipe in her hand.
Yeah.
And went after this guy, Mike, as well. And she got arrested. So, I think what's hard to do with what you and I do is like the police will tell us a different story.
Yeah,
but
of course.
The general problem maker there was this Mike guy.
Yeah. Yeah. No, that makes sense. And then but no one actually laid hands on Johnny Chang then, right?
No. There was a rumor initially that Johnny Chang was assaulted. I have not heard that. Could he have fell to the ground during the little fracas that ensued? Possibly. I mean, again, Johnny is, I believe, early 70s. He's not a young guy anymore.
Right.
That said, was he beaten up and assaulted? No, that's untrue. In fact,
he has a lot of respect in the neighborhood, from my understanding.
Right. And Johnny is like Johnny's. You look at guys like Joe Legambi, right?
Yeah.
Joe's Joe's in his 80s. Joe is about as respected across the board as you can get. I mean, he is universally respected by everybody. And look, I'm sure there's stuff that Joe doesn't understand. I'm sure Joe doesn't understand why certain people have podcasts. I'm sure.
Right.
But Joe's old. He's got money. He hangs out with his family. I think he just wants to go, die in peace. Right.
Yeah.
Remember, Joe Legambi was sentenced to life in prison for a murder, and he was cut out in the early 90s on a technicality, I believe, or the 2000s. He shouldn't be on the street. I think he views his life as a gift, and he don't want to be involved with this shit.
Yeah, no, that makes sense. And he is well respected. I always, when I look at like these bosses or interim bosses, whatever they want to say, is Philly since that time, I feel like that he was very old school. He's kind of a well respected boss.
And James, let me tell you something. I'll build off that. Great point by you.
Yeah.
Regardless of what we want to hear, Joey Merlino was not recognized by the bosses in New York. We've heard Mikey Scars talk about that. John Gotti didn't recognize him. I'm going to guarantee certain other groups didn't either.
Right.
Do you know who they did recognize? Joseph Lagambi.
Yeah.
You know, Joe went to a meeting at a restaurant in North Jersey with high-ranking people in the Gambino family. You know, he was a respected guy, and I think he's a universally respected guy.
Yeah.
He was in that world. So that just goes to show you how respected Joe was.
Yeah. No, that makes sense. And so, yeah, I know we've been on a while, but was there anything that you'd like to say before we close the show?
No, I actually really enjoy talking to you. I think we have some good conversation, and
sure.
And I think we need to do more of this. As far as me, no, I'm just kind of trying to find interesting people to speak to. I'm trying to do, some different content. I'm going to do some, watch some TV shows, mob related, and kind of react. Just try to do different types of things. I'm working on an interview that I think will be pretty interesting with a guy who did not cooperate, that was connected to their life. And I'm hoping to see if we can get him on soon. So, we'll go from there and see what's next.
Yeah, no, you're doing great. And, I encourage everyone to go over to the Sit Down with Jeff Nadu. If you haven't already subscribed, go over there and check out his work. I mean, most people know you, but, I still want to encourage them to see your content. And, I appreciate you coming on with me today.
Yeah, I appreciate you having me. Keep up the good work, man. Good luck.
All right. Thanks a lot. And we'll do this again soon. Okay.
Sounds good.
All right. Thanks a lot.